Hello there, World of Tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, World of Blitz, and in today's video, I'll be letting you know everything you need to that is coming soon to World of Tanks Blitz. We have otherworldly vehicles that you wouldn't ever think Wargaming would even add to the game. We have new camos, and most specifically, a new line coming into the game. So let's break into everything. Starting off, it appears we have a legendary camo, which looks really lame for the CS53. We can see like little flies and bugs flying around these tomato plants on the back of the vehicle, which is just kind of weird. The camo's alright, and we can see that it is indeed the tier 8 vehicle, because we make our way over to the CS, and yeah, it's the tier 8 Polish med. This tank is alright. The problem is the CS63 is incredibly mediocre and has basically nothing going for it. So I know Wargaming's trying to entice people to go down the line by adding a camo for it, but nobody's going to grind it. This is the least played tier 10 in the game, and it doesn't surprise me at all. Why? I mean, look at it. It's just such a mediocre tank. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we have the Object 590 here. I made a whole statistical breakdown on this vehicle already, so if you want to hear or see about this tank, I would highly recommend to check that out. The 590 seems to be just another Soviet-style medium, although it does have some buffed characteristics compared to the others. It's got a better turret, it's got a decent upper plate. It's kind of like a CS52 LIS, just thrown in the tier 8, which I'm actually a big fan of. We can see here the big information and the new line reveal. The Rhinoceronte, gotta pronounce it right. The Rhino is such a cool vehicle. Now we can see that Wargaming isn't showing the tier 6, 7, 8, or 9. But we can very easily solve that problem by going over to the tech tree on World of Tanks PC and seeing the Progetto 66, Progetto 54, Caro P88. I'm not sure what the tier 6 will be though, as even on PC there is no tier 6. But I'm quite confident that the Progetto 66 and 54 will be on the line as well. This is not the upgraded turret. This is the stock turret. Personally, I am really excited for the Rhino. My friend and I were literally just a couple months ago talking about how this is a line we really want added into the game. But the question is, how is Wargaming going to balance it? The Minnow is already an auto-reloading high alpha tank. And if you take a look at the Rhinoceronte's gun, it's got 490 damage per shot and 1980 DPM. That might ring a couple bells, because the Minnow has very similar levels of DPM, and look at the shell reloads. It's almost 20 seconds for the third shell. So the Rhino is basically a Minnow on PC. What I'm quite confident about is that armor is not going to be the major strength of this vehicle. On PC, the Rhino has okay armor. Its upper plate's about 250-60 mils thick, but the turret is only about 300 base, and even if you're using it with full gun depression, it only gets up to about 330. That's good, but you need to remember on Blitz, we have calibrated shells, and that will butter right through the turret. So I'm not exactly sure how well armored this vehicle is going to be, but the major nice thing about the Rhino on PC is that the gun is super accurate. 0.27 dispersion and less than 2 seconds of aiming time allows this vehicle to use the high alpha and ridiculously good accuracy to butter through its opponent's weak spots, and that's why I personally really like the tank. It's also decently mobile. It goes 40 kilometers per hour at a top speed with 18 in reverse, so it's mobile. It's got a really solid gun in terms of accuracy. Is Wargaming going to translate this into Blitz? Honestly, I'm doubting it. I'm going to say that Wargaming's going to give it 440 alpha with 3 shells, but we'll find out. I'm personally really excited, and yeah, I guess we'll have to see once the stats get released. Back to the video we go, and oh boy, this is actually a really exciting one. There is a new legendary camo coming out, as we could see, for the Semovente Contra Caro 64. This is the tier 8 Italian tech tree tank destroyer. More Italian vehicles. Personally, I'm really excited for this camo. We can see the 64 right here. The vehicle looks alright, and I was literally the other day recording a video on this tank, which I'll probably have up tomorrow, where I was talking about this tank should have a legendary camo. It's such a busted vehicle. It's got such good DPM. I'm surprised Wargaming hasn't given one already to it. And speak of the devil, they literally just gave it a camo. I'm not sure if this is going to be part of a battle pass or if this camo is just going to be a camo you can buy, but what I can say is it looks really, really cool, so good job. We can also see the Cobra is most likely making a return. I don't think the camo is necessarily the main takeaway here because this camo is already in the game. In fact, if I make my way over to the tier 9 British medium right now and we go over to the camo department, we can already see the camos in game. You just can't get it. The only way to purchase it is in the massive containers. So hopefully they release the camo for purchase. It's not the end of the world if they don't, but it is definitely a cooler version than the Vinny camo, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, the Cobra is most likely coming back, which is cool, and it's going to be coming with the legendary camo, which I am personally excited to get my hands on. So what else do we have? Well, this took me a couple seconds of looking at the vehicle to figure out what this tank is, but it's the IS-4. It's kind of got a similar design to the AMX-50B camo that we already have in the game. The AMX-50B has a blue kind of legendary camo. It honestly looks sick, I'm not gonna lie. We can see that right here. It's got like these ancient Mayan markings all over it, and it's got like this blue effect in between the rocks cracking. I think it looks really cool, and as we can clearly see, this is once again another similar designed camo, this time for the IS-4. Personally, I think it looks cool. However, I'd still like a historical camo. I know sometimes I like very cool legendary camos that aren't historical, and people will disagree with that. Like, I think this camo looks really good on the 50B because the 50B is a big bulbous tank, so I think it matches the vehicle. But I also think that there are certain tanks like the Balchation camo. This looks sick in my opinion. Certain people won't agree with that, certain will. I think this camo looks really nice, but I'm also never going to say no to historical camos. You make your way over to Grill. I think this is one of the best camos Wargaming's made in the game. So I like all sorts of camos. I think right now my favorite camo in tier 10 is probably the Caro, which isn't historical at all, and the 121. Neither of these are historical, but they look really, really good. And I hope that Wargaming, I don't know, we'll see what the camo's like once we actually get it in our garage, but it's kind of a chunky one. The other unfortunate thing is that it's for a vehicle that is quite nerfed right now, which is rather lame, I'm not gonna lie. Hopefully they buff the IS-4. We can see the AMX M4 Tier 7 Tech Tree Heavy is getting PBR. We can also see the T22 Medium is getting PBR, and wow, that legendary camo looks really, really nice on the vehicle with it. Final Tier 10 getting PBR is the T62A. To what I'm aware, this vehicle is losing 1 degree of gun depression, however, that might not be over the front. We'll have to find out once it actually gets the PBR. For example, the M48 Patton received PBR and it lost a degree of gun depression. However, that's only over the sides. In the front, it still keeps its 9 degrees. So that is something you should keep in mind. Apart from that, we've got a new event coming into the game, and as we can see, one of the main rewards is the Elephant. This is a tier 8 collector tank destroyer. It's basically a Ferdinand with a 10.5 centimeter gun. It's interesting. I would say the Yagtiger 8.8 looks better in quite a bit of ways, but we will have to see when this vehicle does get released. I can also see that there appears to be a legendary camo for the vehicle in the crate next to it, so we'll have to find out how this event works. Most likely you're going to have to spend money, but we'll find out. There's one last thing to talk about before we end off today's video. Quite possibly the weirdest thing I've ever seen added into World of Tanks Blitz. This is the ground tank. It is a tier 8 Blitz Nation Heavy. And, yeah, it's really, really weird. We're going to take a brief look at its statistics, and I'm going to share my opinions on what I think about this vehicle and if tanks like this should be added into the game. Let's start off with the stats. We can take a look here. They're a little blurry, but we can still read them. Hit points, 2014. That's a lot for a tier 8. It's got 220 mils on the turret, but we can take a look at the armor in just a moment. 270 meters of E-range, pretty average, and top speed-wise, it's also pretty average at 37 kilometers per hour, but oh, only 12 in reverse. As usual, Wargaming giving these vehicles absolutely awful reverse speed. Its power to weight is 13, pretty dang awful. Damage per minute, 1935, which is pretty average for a tier 8, but I should say that's with rammer on, so not good. It has very good APCR pen, though, at 270 mils, so you won't even need to run calibrated. It's got pretty mid-standard pen, though, at only 217. Average damage for this 130mm is 440 on the standard, 370 on the premium, and 580 on the high explosive. It's not accurate even in the slightest imagination. 4.4 seconds of aiming time at 0.371 dispersion. It's essentially a 60 TP accuracy level at tier 8. Does have 9 degrees of gun depression though, which is rather interesting for a vehicle that looks like it shouldn't have more than 6. Now we can see that it has 9 degrees all over the entire front. It doesn't look like it should, but yeah, because of the way the armor works, it has 9 degrees over the entire front. So how does the armor work? Well, we can take a look, and this is what it is. What we have up against you is 270mm of IS-5 heat pen against this tank. And while it does show some gray, that's actually thicker than it looks, and it's 290 mils thick because I've put on enhanced armor. So essentially, this vehicle's entire outer turret, if you're aiming at someone, is upwards of 300mm thick. Now, when you're actually using gun depression, it gets slightly weaker due to the angling, so it's more like 290, but still, that means if you're running enhanced armor on this vehicle, heat shells from even the best of the best when it comes to tier 8 heavies are not going to be able to cut through this vehicle. The upper plate's upwards of 320mm thick, and as we can see, the gun mantlet, you're never ever going to cut through. Now, it does have a weak spot, which is the entire superstructure here. You can pen through this. It's only about 230mm thick, so that's pretty weak. This here is only about 180. So if you're able to squeeze a shell in between the gun, you can pen the vehicle, which is rather interesting, but that's also probably going to be a rather challenging shot. There is another weak spot, and that's the entire lower structure here. It's only about 150 mils thick, and if you're not using the gun depression, everybody's going to be able to see that. We can see, though, that the tank has a lot of tracks. This is 350mm of track armor there, so it'll be interesting to see how thick these tracks are. Obviously, this is heat, so it's not going to cut through this, but it says it's only about 160 mils, so not actually that strong of armor between those track links. This upper plate here, pretty strong. It's 2,340mm, so yeah, good luck cutting through that. Although it looks like if you do hit the flat spot, you will pen, so I just wouldn't shoot at that part of the vehicle at all. When it comes to side armor, the tank is really weird. It's got pretty weak sides, about 100-ish millimeters thick, even adding in the spaced armor. That's pretty mid overall, but it will be very good at side scraping because of how thick these tracks are. We also have a turret, which on the flat side is about 150mm, and it's just such a weird tank. I mean, I can't even really say effective armor anywhere on the turret because it's got so many different angles, but if you hit this middle back spot, it's about 80 mils, but other spots range upwards of 90 to 130 to 116. It's just a weird tank. Personally, I don't know how I feel about vehicles like this coming into World of Tanks Blitz. I think it's cool that Wargaming is collaborating with other companies and movies and things like that, but I also don't think that this necessarily fits into the game itself. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like, I think the Nameless, the Lupus, things like that are alright, because they're not these big, massive vehicles, but I don't know. This one's really, really weird. But I am open. I'm open. As long as it's not overpowered and it's a fairly well-balanced vehicle, I think it'll be fine. So I guess we'll have to see. Right now, the armor definitely seems a little bit nutty, but we'll find out. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.